Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, we're going to do something kind of fun today. We are going to go and visit the Waco Suspension Bridge. This is the oldest still standing bridge in the state of Texas, and for the longest time it was the largest suspension bridge west of the Mississippi. Obviously there's been a few now in like San Francisco that have probably surpassed that. But let's go look at this. This is going to be fun. There's a lot of history in this. All right, here we are underneath the famous Waco Suspension Bridge. The story of this thing started in about 1860. At that point, there were no bridges whatsoever to get across the Brazos River here. You can see there's a whole bunch of them now, but at that point, there were none. The story of the Waco Suspension Bridge begins in about 1860. At that point, Waco was just starting to grow, and there were no bridges crossing the Brazos River here. As you can see, you know, it's 100 yards to the other side, so that was quite an accomplishment to get across this thing. Early on, there were some ferries that would transport people across, but the truth is, when they had to move cows across, they'd just cross the river like you'd see in the old Western movies. They'd find some shallow point and try and get across. But unfortunately, not being able to get across the river became a big issue. But unfortunately, there wasn't really any money to do anything about it. This was right after the Civil War, and everything was really bad financially. In 1866, the state of Texas commissioned a company that they called the Waco Bridge Company, whose job it was to build this bridge. And the condition was that they could charge toll for it, and they would have a monopoly over the bridge. Nobody could build another bridge within 5 miles of it, and the only condition was that they had to maintain it. So the Waco Bridge Company put up the money of $25,000, a hefty sum at that time, to build the original bridge. They hired a company called the Roebling Company in Trenton, New Jersey, to build the cables for the suspension bridge. The Roebling Company later manufactured the cables for the Brooklyn Bridge, so this was a good start off for them. The bridge itself opened in the year 1870, and by charging toll, they actually paid off the mortgage in the first year. Unfortunately, this kind of became a problem with the city, because now that the bridge was paid off, the people were starting to get a little frustrated by constantly having to pay a toll to get across. So eventually, McClellan County bought the bridge from the Waco Bridge Company for $75,000, and then turned around and sold it to Waco for $1 on the condition that the city of Waco would maintain the bridge and that the tolls would be eliminated. That happened. In the year 1913, there was actually a push to have the thing torn down because it was starting to become an eyesore. Instead of doing that, however, Waco invested in it. They redid a lot of the struts that are in there, and they stuccoed over the bridge foundations that are on the other side and over here, and painted them so that it wasn't the old ugly red brick anymore. They also replaced the flooring on the deck, and we'll go across that in a few minutes and take a look at that. And I got somebody here watching me do my vlogging. Hey Duck, how are you, buddy? Got anything to add? Huh? Got anything to add? No? Yeah, this seems to be a very popular chill out spot for the ducks too. Now, as you approach this thing from the west side, you're greeted with these big, massive statues. I saw pictures of this thing when I was researching this, but you get no bearing how big these things are when you're directly in their presence. This guy here is clearly about 6 feet tall. And there are just dozens of them along here. And this is supposed to commemorate the early days when they had to cross the river by actually going into the water here. That dude's at least 15 feet tall there. He's massive too. kind of a trip. All the cows are branded with a Waco logo, commemorating the Texas Longhorn. Just gotta love all the detail on this. The Waco Suspension Bridge, the first bridge across the Brazos River, opened January 7th, 1870 as a private toll bridge, and at that time it was the longest single-span suspension bridge in the world, 475 feet across. Bought by McClellan County in 1889 and made a public free thoroughfare. Steel and cables furnished by John A. Roebling, New York, who built the Brooklyn Bridge. So let's take a walk across this thing. I actually found some old pictures that seem to indicate that at one point there was a second bridge right here. In fact, you can even see the footings on the river. We'll show you those when we go out there. And they were sending vehicles both directions across this thing. I guess they just never tore the footings up. As I said, there was a move to have it torn down in 1913, and rather than do that, they just basically shored the whole thing up. They replaced the decking on the floor here. They added some more trusses underneath, and replaced a lot of the wood trusses with steel so they'll hold up better. And they also painted over the original towers at each end. Check out these cables. Yeah, that's my hand, so those are big. Big, giant cables. Necessary to keep a bridge like this from falling down. And you can see this is kind of where the support is for each of the major sections here. You can see the truss underneath there. You can actually look through and see the water underneath. Holding onto my phone really good here so I don't drop it. But each one of the cables then is attached to one of the trusses, and that's what supports everything. Bridge is a little bit creaky right now, but that's what happens when you're 150 some odd years old. So like I said, this was all just a red brick pattern. I guess I stuck it over that and painted it to make it look nice. So once you get to the other side here, this street right out in front of us here, this is called Martin Luther King Boulevard. So needless to say, I saw that there were some murals down by the foot of the river for Martin Luther King. So let's go take a look at those. Remember when I was on the other side, I mentioned that there was a secondary bridge that kind of went across so they could accommodate two-way traffic. You can see some of the footings out there in the middle of the river from that. And I guess this was another one of the footings right here. that they chose to redecorate and honor the great Martin Luther King. In fact, that's what it says right here. Dedicated to the memory of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., whose words and deeds proved one person can make a difference. So that's obviously commemorating his famous "I Have a Dream" speech from the Lincoln Memorial. And now it seems to be a very popular pigeon roost. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., 1929 to 1968. Free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. And a couple more murals at the far side facing away from the river. And an image of him in jail from that jail cell, I think, that Jordan saw recently. I also noticed that there's a stairway going up to the top of this thing. It's an observation deck, so let's definitely go up there and see what's there. First thing I noticed when I got up here is that there seems to be a trend of attaching padlocks to this thing. Because like all the way around, there's padlocks attached. Thought that was kind of interesting. Some more even written on there. But as I mentioned, remember, there's the support footings for that secondary bridge that apparently no longer exists. And a beautiful view of the bridge. From the east side, all the way over to the west side. Beautiful, huh? Remember how I told you that in 1913 there was a push to kind of tear this thing down, and they decided instead to refurbish it by replacing the decking and stuccoing over the brickwork? Well, this is at the base on the east side of the bridge, and apparently they didn't re-stucco this part, so this is still the original material, what the whole bridge used to look like. Very cool. Also see we got kind of a big crack going on here, and they're monitoring that to see how much it's growing. Got to keep tabs on things like that because you don't want your bridge collapsing. Granted, they don't let vehicles over here anymore, but this is the underside of the bridge here, and I believe that these pieces going across here are the steel trusses that they replaced. Those were originally wood. So obviously this steel is going to do a little bit better and going to last a little longer. So let's take one more walk across the bridge. This time I'm going to focus more on like what's in the water than on the bridge itself. There's a little walkway on the side which allows you closer access to the river. There's that Martin Luther King mural we were just looking at. We take it for granted now how easy it is to cross the river, but it wasn't that easy when there wasn't a bridge every 15 feet. Look over there, you can actually see a train in the background. Definitely wouldn't have wanted to cross the river without a bridge on a train. That would be no good. But see, this is what they say was significant in helping to build up Waco, because you know, when you can't get in or out of your town, it's really hard to move goods. So the second you make it possible to cross this river, things are definitely going to change, and Waco has been on a tear ever since. Oh look, they got paddle boarding down there. I'm gonna bring my paddle board down and see if I can fall in the water again. Crawl under the massive cables here and go over to the other side. One of the posts for that secondary bridge that I talked about seems just to be a bird habitat now. Some of these wooden planks are a little bit loose, so they need to be tightened up. It's probably time to restore this thing again. And back to the Longhorns, waiting for their chance to cross. That's funny, this one's got a Baylor University brand. Wonder if they're all different. Yeah, see, here's another one. I don't even know what that is. Is that Texas A&M? I don't know. Oh, nuts. Now I gotta go look at all of them and figure out which, what they all are. Yep, all sorts of different brands here. Although they all seem to be branded with the Waco logo. Wow, you never know what you're gonna run into out here in the middle of Waco. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was really hot out there though, so I'm glad to be back in the air conditioning. But that was a lot of fun to see that. I've been meaning to actually hit that place almost since I got here initially. You may remember about a month or month and a half ago, I did just kind of a driving tour around Waco where I went to the river and kind of just saw some of the interesting attractions around here. And I remember seeing the Waco Bridge then, and I'd seen somebody else had done a vlog of that, and I knew I wanted to hit that at some point. So today was a good day to do that. I'm glad we did. Make sure you come back tomorrow, because tomorrow is my 100th episode. Yay! I didn't think we'd make it this far, but we're going to try and do something really special tomorrow. And since to celebrate the 100th episode, I think I am going to do a live stream on Sunday, which is tomorrow for you. It's still Thursday for me, so I got to keep this all straight in my head. But on Sunday at 6 p.m. Texas time, that's usually 2 hours before my vlogs go live, I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow. So I hope you'll check in for that. Until then, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.